Welcome to the second part of AS London's Wellness Academy's video on the nervous system. So let's pick back up on the spine. So we're going to start looking at the spinal cord. It's the other main part alongside the brain, which is of the main parts of the central nervous system. The structure of the spinal cord is that it extends from the medulla oblongata through the spinal vertebrae and it ends at the first lumbar vertebra. It consists of white matter on the surface and grey matter inside. And it actually branches off into 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and it's the part one of the central cranial nerve. The function is that the spinal cord carries motor and sensory nerves along its length, and this will then send messages to and from the body and the brain. We're going to look at the other parts of the central nervous system. So let's start with the meninges. These are membranes that protect the whole of the central nervous system, and we have three different layers. We have dura mater, which is a double layer of tough fibrous membranes. The outer layer forms the periosteum, which is the skin of the skull, while the inner layer is the first protective covering of the brain. It continues as the spinal dura mater as far down as the sacrum. We've then got the arachnoid matter. It's a delicate membrane which is positioned immediately under the dura and above the pia mater. It merges with the dura mater and it covers the spinal cord as far as the sacrum. It connects to the subarachnoid space and it's situated between the arachnoid matter and the pia mater. It's filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, which we're going to go into more detail shortly. The pia mater is a thin vascular membrane and it works closely to cover the brain. It dips into the various surface folds of the cerebrum and the cerebellum and continues along the length of the spinal cord. It supplies blood to the brain and the spinal cord. We're now going to look at the ventricles and the cerebrospinal fluid. There are four cavities inside the brain called ventricles, and they all contain the cerebrospinal fluid. Two of these ventricles lie laterally within the cerebrum, and a third one actually lies deep inside the brain, where the fourth, also deep inside the brain, opens into subarachnoid space. The structure of this fluid is that it's clear and colourless, and it's formed in special cells that are situated in the lining of the ventricles. It resembles blood plasma in its composition because it's made up of proteins, glucose and salt. It's secreted into the ventricles from where it circulates around the whole brain and spinal cord and then reabsorbed into the venous sinuses of the body, and this is through the arachnoid matter. The functions of the cerebrospinal fluid is that it protects the brain and spinal cord, and it forms a cushion between the bony cavities and the nerves, and it acts as a shock absorber. It keeps the pressure around the brain and the spinal cord constant, and it also transports nutrients and removes waste and any toxic substances. So let's go into the peripheral nervous system now. This nervous system concerns all of the nervous system outside of the central nervous system and contains motor and sensory nerves, which transmit information to and from the body. The peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The cranial nerves are divided into 12 pairs and include sensory, motor and mixed nerves. We have the ophthalmic nerves. These are sensory nerves. They supply the lacrimal glands, eyelids, forehead and the anterior part of the scalp and mucous membrane of the nose. The maxillary, which is a sensory nerve supplying the lower eyelids, upper gums, upper teeth and cheeks. And the mandibular, which are your sensory and motor nerves supplying the teeth, gums of the lower jaw, ear and tongue. Your motor supplies the muscles of mastication, which is your chewing. Your seventh facial motor supply the muscles of facial expression and sensory supply of nerves of taste from the anterior part of the tongue. The 11th accessory, there are two parts, cranial and spinal. Cranial branches along the vagus nerve to supply the pharynx and the larynx, and the spinal branches supplying the trapezius and the sternocleidomastoid. Your spinal nerves, these nerves begin in the spinal cord and supply all parts of the body not covered by the cranial nerves. They are mixed nerves. Spinal nerves are divided into 31 pairs. Cervical, 8 pairs, thoracic, 12 pairs, lumbar, 5 pairs, sacral, 5 pairs, and your coccygeal, 1 pair. The cervical and thoracic nerves are named after the vertebra at the level at which they exit the spinal cord. The lumbar, sacral and coccygeal nerves leave the spinal cord at the level of the first lumbar vertebra and extend downwards inside the vertebral canal, exiting the canal at different levels depending on their destination. All spinal nerves except the 2nd to the 12th thoracic nerves branch out and regroup to form plexus, which supply different parts of the body. The cervical plexus contains 4 cervical nerves and supplies the muscles of the neck, shoulders and skin and includes the pharyngeal nerve. This sends nerve impulses to the diaphragm telling it to contract. The branchial plexus is the group that includes the lower 4 cervical nerves and the first thoracic nerve. It branches out to supply the muscles from the base of the neck to the fingertips and skin. We have the thoracic or intercostal nerves, and the thoracic nerves supply the chest muscles and the main part of the abdomen wall. The lumbar plexus is the group that includes the first 3 lumbar nerves and part of the 4th. It supplies the skin and muscles of the lower abdomen, thighs and groin. The sacral plexus includes the 4th and 5th lumbar nerves and the first 4 sacral nerves. It supplies the muscles and skin to the pelvic area. The main nerve is the sciatic nerve, which supplies the hamstrings before dividing above the knee and into the tibial and common peroneal nerves to supply the lower leg. You have your coccygeal plexus, and this group forms a small second plexus onto the back of the pelvic cavity, and it supplies the muscles and skin of the pelvic area, such as the external sphincter of the anus, tissues of the perineum, and the external genitalia. We're now going to look at the somatic and autonomic nervous system. The motor division of the peripheral nervous system is divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system conducts impulses from the CNS to the skeletal muscle fibres. This is the voluntary branch of the PNS and allows conscious control over the contraction of skeletal muscles. The autonomic nervous system conducts impulses from the central nervous system to cardiac and smooth muscles. This is the involuntary system controlled by the hypothalamus. Its nerves arise from the medulla oblongata. The autonomic nervous system is further divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. Each and every organ in the body has a sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve supply, with one division generating the opposite effect to the other. The sympathetic consists of nerves that arise from the spinal cord at the thoracic and lumbar region. These form ganglia, which are bundles of nerve fibres just outside the central nervous system, and extend to the organ or tissue they supply. The function is that it prepares the body for stressful situations such as excitement or the physical activity, so it's your fight or flight system. Neurons release acetylcholine and non-adrenaline, which have the following effects. Accelerates the action of the heart, this increases the rate and force of contraction, and vasodilation of coronary arteries, increasing blood supply to the heart muscle. Vasodilation of vessels, supplying skeletal muscles and oxygen, nutrients supply and waste removal. Causes sustained concentration of the spleen, increasing volume of blood circulating around the body. And it dilates the bronchioles, increasing volume of air that can be inspired and exhaled. We're going to look at the parasympathetic now. The structure consists of nerves that arise from the brain and sacral region of the spinal cord, from ganglia near to the inside organ or tissue they supply. The functions is that it's for the non-stressful situation and keeps the normal body functions returning when the body is at rest. Neurons release acetylcholine. It slows the action of the heart, decreasing rate and force of contraction. Vasoconstriction of coronary arteries decreases the blood supply to the heart muscle. Vasodilation of blood vessels supplies the digestive system and urinary system with contraction of the bladder and rectal muscles, increasing digestion, nutrient absorption, and also removal of waste products, and constricts of the bronchi, decreasing the volume of air. We're going to have a quick look at reflexes. A reflex is the automatic movement produced by sensory stimulus. It's an instant and involuntary movement. Several structures are involved in the production of a reflex, and together they constitute the reflex. A function of a reflex is mostly to protect and design the stimuli for quickest motor response. There are reflexes which are automatic and do not require supervision, like the secretion of gastric juices when food reaches the stomach. This is the end of this video lecture, and you'll be studying the diseases and disorders.